How's it going, Starlings? Welcome to my Stargirl Season 2, Episode 9, or should I say Chapter 9, breakdown, recap, and review. And this episode, I would say, for a lot of Stargirl fans in the know, it's been one of the more anticipated episodes because of these JSA flashbacks. And this episode was really decent, in my opinion. We got a lot of creepy moments, a lot of context that we've been itching for a long time now with Pat and the secret that he's been keeping from the JSA and Courtney, which is, been something teased for quite a while. We got a little teaser of Icicle Jr. Stargirl continues to keep the very creepy trolling of Eclipso up, and it seems to get more and more serious. So we need to get into the details of this episode, guys, because we also had John Wesley Shipp's The Flash feature in this episode, which, to be honest, unless I'm being really stupid, it doesn't make all the sense in the world unless it does, but we'll get into those details. But go ahead and like this video if you do go on to enjoy it. I would really appreciate that, and of course subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Just want to throw this in here because a lot of you commented saying, oh, you're actually right about this. A lot of you come back to my channel week after week. Maybe you think you're subscribed, or maybe it's just because the videos are recommended. But hey, maybe today is the day you actually click that red button so you don't have to always type in my name or whatever. You'll always guarantee that my videos will be in your inbox that way. So yeah, click the subscribe button if you do find yourself coming back here without being subscribed. But the episode picked up with a flashback decades ago, and we got to see Bruce Gordon finally. I've actually been itching for this moment, waiting for what actually, he's like as a person, what happened to him after the island, because I swear they said that he went missing or nobody ever heard from him ever again, but clearly he released the book somehow to a publisher and stuff. So, and we saw that being written in the typewriter, the Lost Society's book, and I swear there was like a Doom Patrol reference, unless I'm going crazy. It said My Greatest Adventure, which is a Doom Patrol run, so, it has to be surely. But this scene was really cool in setting up the origin for Bruce Gordon and Eclipso, because don't forget that the way Eclipso and the way we're seeing him now in present day is the small child version of this older Bruce Gordon. And he was saying, I wish I never brought you back from the damn island. And, we get some context as to what Eclipso thinks of that and what he's done for Bruce Gordon. Was saying, oh, well, you never cursed my name before when I was helping you find fame and fortune. He says that, you ruined the life of my friends and colleagues and stuff. It's like, well, did I, or was that you? It's a whole bunch of typical Eclipso trolling back and forth, wanting to stay in power, seeing the power that he's also given Bruce Gordon, but through obtaining power through Eclipso, it was like, making a house of cards, so to speak. It is all come collapsing down towards the end of his life. It's also kind of like the One Ring situation, because, all he has to do is put the diamond away, and Eclipso even somewhat teases that, but he's like, well, you can't let go of this power, can you? Now, I am intrigued as to the Mona person, the woman he's in love with, because Eclipso does say her husband's the only thing that stands between you and her, nothing else. He says, I won't kill anyone, and that's when Eclipso's like, hey man, I'll do it. But who is this Mona? And I was thinking, oh, is this the woman, that the Shade keeps referencing, but he keeps referencing this Emily person. So I have no idea if this is just a little throwaway thing where he's just offering, Bruce Gordon a chance to be with the woman he loves. But I don't know, the whole husband thing had me intrigued as well. But maybe it was just another act of evil that Bruce Gordon has given into his whole life, because clearly this Black Diamond is kind of bad, and he's probably known that his whole life, so this doesn't make Bruce Gordon out to be the most safest, nice person in the world. In Blue Valley, in present day, it looks like there's a big-ass storm coming. Everyone is preparing for the storm. I think as a result of the storm as well, Rick's hearing has been cancelled, so he's still chilling in jail, and I believe from the promo of next episode, we even see him in jail, so that's where he's just chilling for the time being, and I'm still really wondering how he's going to get out of jail unless his uncle just drops charges, which I'm not entirely sure he is the type of uncle to do that. And Courtney is just getting frustrated in general, because this couldn't be really worse. Like, Beth and her have now decided that they're just going to go after Eclipso with what they currently have, which, to be honest, I do get Pat's perspective and I get Courtney's perspective, but still going in unprepared, despite her saying, well, when have you ever been happy with how prepared we've been? yeah, but this isn't the way to do it. You're still going in with what, 2 members? With arguably one of them, as much as I enjoy Beth Chapel as a character, she can't defend herself at all. She completely relies upon the goggles, so other than that, Courtney, what you gotta do with a half-charged cosmic staff? It's not gonna work out. But this all then dived us into the first proper flashback where things really started kicking off, and that is with the funeral of Rebecca McNider, which is really tragic because obviously she's a 10-year-old girl. We saw Charles McNider, the original first Dr. Midnight there. You know, his wife's blaming him for not being there, and you can only imagine the guilt you would somewhat have. We have the other JSA members all there in attendance. I love the aesthetic, the old school kind of feels to it. It is kind of funny in a sense though, because, you know, this was decades ago, and Pat, he doesn't look any different, but, you know, I do get it. It doesn't really bother me. And so this is when they just discuss Eclipso, how could anyone do this to a child? And we are introduced into this Flash of this world, which this is where I say it doesn't really add up to me. I mean, it could, I suppose, in one way. It's just to establish the way my brain is seeing this right now, in that after Crisis on Infinite Earths, even though this technically happened decades ago, the way Crisis works is that through the new timeline and everything after Crisis, the events of what are happening here technically always happened this way, if that makes sense. Even when Crisis happened and changed things, so to speak, it still affects all of the past at the same time. I know that gets very convoluted to follow. For example, like, you know, we had before Lois and Clark just had a baby, and then, you know, it turned into them having 2 teenagers in present day, meaning that they had 2 babies in the past years and years ago, about 16 years ago, give or take, depending on how old they are in Superman and Lois. So you see what I mean. The events, because of Crisis, still affect the past to always be this new thing, even if it happened a long time ago. So technically here, with John Wesley Shipp's Jay Garrick, the way I see that, now this is still post-Crisis, even though it's showing an old event, it still should be post-Crisis. So that's why it doesn't particularly add up to me, because, you know, we had Jay Garrick, the Flash, John Wesley Shipp, who's wearing the exact same Flash suit as what he does on Earth Prime. After Crisis, well, it turns out that Earth 2's Jay Garrick was merged with Earth Prime, and Earth Prime is the very Earth that we have Supergirl on, Black Lightning, the Flash, Superman and Lois. It's all canonically a post-Crisis Earth Prime world, but there are other Earths, such as Earth 2, there's a Titans Earth, there's a Doom Patrol Earth, there's a frickin' Earth where you have Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. You see where I'm going with this. So what I'm trying to get to the bottom line of here is that we have the Flash, Jay Garrick Flash, on Earth Prime with that suit. So I don't understand how, with Stargirl being shown at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths on Earth 2, how is the exact same John Wesley Shipp? Now, this is where I do want to correct myself. I guess in an infinite multiverse, you could just still argue that, well, Stargirl, being on Earth 2, post-Crisis, has a John Wesley Shipp Flash with the exact same looking suit as what Cisco helped make for the Earth Prime's John Wesley Shipp Flash. Do you know what? Are you still following me? So I guess the reason why this is bugging me a little bit is because I want to know if this Flash is meant to be the same Flash on Earth Prime as what we see in present day Flash Season 7, Flash Season 8, but it's not really articulated. Well, all we know, bottom line, is that Stargirl takes place on Earth 2, not Earth Prime. We have John Wesley Shipp's Flash looking identical to the one on Earth Prime, also on Earth 2. Now, that technically is possible because, as I said, in an infinite multiverse, there would be another version of the Flash that is John Wesley Shipp on Earth 2 with the same costume, but I suppose, you know, it could look a little bit different, but I guess, I don't know. I just feel like if you really want to figure out the way the Arrowverse has paved the way to continuity and post-Crisis and stuff, it does come across a teeny bit convoluted. Something that does wind me up, though, is just, like, the way they treat Pat. Like, everyone, to be honest, it's just, like, even when, you know, Pat is legitimately asking very relevant questions, you know, even Starman's just like, let the members ask the questions. Well, why can't the sidekick do it? Why can't Pat be made a member or something? I don't know. It's just like, why are you so mean to him? Especially Wildcat later on. He was being a proper bastard to him. Which is when the Shade appears, and as the Starman says himself, he wouldn't exactly come here in broad daylight and give us a stare down unless he, you know, wanted to talk. It wasn't going to be a fighting situation. And it's just cool seeing the Shade back then, because this is way before, obviously, the ISA battle that actually destroyed the JSA as what we saw in episode 1 of season 1. And so we know that the Shade does go on to fight and even swallow up, I suppose, Dr. Charles McNider, even though he is still technically alive in the Shadowlands. Sylvester does go to talk to him, and that's where he learns a whole bunch of stuff about Eclipso, because he even said that the Shade had fear in his eyes because of facing him beforehand. All at the same time, we keep cutting back to present day and we get Pat being trolled. So, you know, it does make sense. And I did say a few episodes ago, I did predict that systematically Eclipso would be trolling each member of the JSA. And so Pat, for example, has a coffin in the other room, which was, you know, pretty creepy because we saw, I think, Rebecca McNider's hand coming out of it. That's when Pat's in the basement next, and I believe that kicks off another flashback to when Pat was working in his car in the JSA HQ, and we have Starman arrive in the elevator, and this is where a bit of stuff kicks off with a lot more context, shall we say. After Starman spoke to the Shade, he learned that Eclipso isn't even human, and it's a spiritual parasite like this otherworldly creature, and somehow Bruce Gordon found it, and now it's obviously possessed him, and he more or less details the basics of the powers of Eclipso, and Pat's wondering, but why would the Shade help us? And that's when Starman says, yeah, I kind of saw fear in the Shade's eyes, and that's somewhat saying something. He also detailed Starman that the only way that he knows to stop it, and I feel like this is getting a bit too predictable now, the way they're emphasizing the only way to stop Eclipso is to kill the host. So, for example, as we learn, they killed Bruce Gordon, and that then forces Eclipso to go back into the diamond. But the difficulty with that in present day is, well, this is the weird thing that I'm seeing people bring up, and it is very relevant. Eclipso isn't even possessing anyone. Because, yeah, sure, he's going around in mini Bruce Gordon form, and that's fine, logically speaking, because he's out of the Black Diamond, so yeah, there's no need to possess anyone if he can be in his actual form. It's just the issue for the new JSA right now is that the Black Diamond is shattered into pieces, so they're probably going to have to find a way to put those pieces together again and to recreate the Black Diamond shape so it can house Eclipso once more. And I believe from the promo of next week's episode, they may be getting Jenny's powers, the new Green Lantern, to help out with somehow putting those shards of the Heart of Darkness back together, aka the Black Diamond. So it looks like things are going to go that way, but the reason why, going back to my predictable comment, is that it's probably not the only way, and I feel like the new JSA, in like a typical way, are going to find a way to they're going to find a way to stop Eclipso without killing the host. But as I was saying, the difference is this time he's already out of the Black Diamond, so how are they going to fix it? How do you stop Eclipso if he's not possessing anyone? Because that's the only way we know so far how you do stop him, through killing somebody he is possessing. But what happens when he's not possessing anyone? Maybe this season is just going to be about containing him back in the Black Diamond, and as the Shade said, throwing it down the nearest volcano or whatever. I'm not entirely sure, and I would love your theories as to how you think the new JSA are going to differ themselves from the old JSA through stopping Eclipso. And I suppose they already have been differed a little bit, because previously Eclipso was possessing Bruce Gordon. This time around, as I've said a billion times, he's not possessing anyone, because there's no need. He's out of the diamond. What I do love about this scene though, and what this turns into a little bit later on, is that Starman, you know, obviously brings up how you need to kill the host, and that means killing a human being. When the host dies, Eclipso is forced back in the diamond, and as long as nobody touches it, his power will remain inside. I love the optimism of Pat saying, well, you know, we got to save the certain someone who's possessed through exorcising them. That's the code the JSA lives by, the code you live by, and I love the haunting look in Starman's face. I feel like that was not only conveyed by Starman, I think mostly by him, but by quite a few other members of the JSA as well. They knew as if this was their only option, but it was eating them up from the inside out, and clearly from what we learned towards the end of the episode, it practically broke them, and they didn't really even reunite until the ISA reformed themselves. And that's why I love that context as well. Just jumping to that, I love the context of the JSA got defeated by the ISA. You know, I always wondered, like, why was that? I mean, sure, the ISA are powerful and stuff, but this is the JSA. But now we know that they hadn't really been banding together for years. They didn't bounce off each other as well, you know, in a combat sense. It's not like they were rehearsed or anything. So when they went up against the ISA, well, it's like, you know, trying to play a football or a sports game with old buddies of yours that you haven't played with in 15 years or whatever, and then you try and win a game. It's like, good luck with that. And that is context I feel like I really liked hearing. Up next, though, we had Mike wandering around the house, and this is when he lets Cameron Marquand in. What I have to say about this is I'm just very glad that it wasn't actually Cameron, because we've obviously been waiting to see what happened after the paintbrush incident, shall we say, when he froze it. And I just thought when I saw the promo, I was like, no, surely not, because all the promo showed was him, like, being evil, and I thought, wow, are they really just jumping into him just being evil or whatever? And luckily that wasn't the case, because I would have felt like that would be so rushed, so contrived, just because he's found out his powers. I would have assumed that they would have put a scene in this episode, if this was real, that his grandparents told him about his heritage, which I do still expect to happen at some point down the line, by the way. I just think that's the best way for him to learn about everything, through his grandparents, since they have freaking powers as well. But yeah, it wasn't real, but it made for a great tease. I bet the actor would love this, because he's probably been waiting to use icicle powers, but I'm glad it wasn't real ultimately, just to say it one more time, because I feel like it would actually undermine Cameron's personality. I'm not saying he's going to be all sunshine and rainbows when he finds out about his father's death, his heritage, but I do feel like he's a complex of enough character to, even though he might have disdain for Courtney and Mike and whatnot, in a natural way, he will understand. I feel like he's the type of character to understand that his father's vision and the ISA's vision is a bit of a warped one, but he will still be sad about the death. I feel like if he went into what he did this episode, which was fake, it wouldn't be believable for me. So ultimately, it was a great, fun experience seeing where he could go, but it wasn't real, and I'm glad it wasn't, and I would love to know what you guys thought about it. And I almost forgot, of course, Barbara got freaking stuck in her car, and Icicle returned, and obviously another Eclipso trolling session. I like how the Shade still managed to, I guess somehow he's watching over Barbara, and I think his injury is so much more severe than what I ever thought it was. When Eclipso just like grabbed him in the ribs, I just thought he put his fingernails into his ribs, so obviously he had multiple wounds perhaps, but I didn't think it would be that serious. But it seems he's been clinging on to life ever since that battle at the high school with Cindy, which is quite crazy. But in this moment he managed to snap Barbara out of it, and yet again I think he's kind of tripping himself, because he says that go home, I need Emily, like whatever that means. Now we know that Barbara reminds him of this Emily, but once again, my theories behind this Emily person is his own personal tragedy through, the act of Eclipso and whatever he did to, we know that he's faced the Shade in the past before. I'm guessing that this is a very motivation he's always wanted to stop Eclipso, because he took either his own daughter from him, Emily, his wife, Emily, we don't know. The trolling for Pat continues in the basement, because we have old man Bruce Gordon just standing there in the background, very horror-esque theme. This takes us to another JSA flashback where the deed was indeed done, so to speak. We had Pat parked outside Bruce Gordon's little mansion, and it did kind of make me think, no, to be honest, why is Bruce Gordon still there? He gave himself up to Eclipso, so you would have thought, in a logical sense, that Eclipso would have just gone out into the world, having possessed Bruce Gordon to do whatever he was going to do. I don't know, but either way, I guess it was convenient, because this is when the JSA went in there. Somehow I almost totally forgot about the JSA meeting where, oh, look, they actually wanted to include Pat in a vote. I don't get why he isn't anyway. Look, I know he's a psychic and he doesn't actually have like a cosmic star for a superpower or whatever, but it just winds me up, because he's there every day in the HQ back in those days. I'm pretty sure he has the expertise and opinion, just like anyone else, to offer something to the table. I'm just sticking up for Pat. So either way, they won his vote now. And I like Jay Garrick most in this scene, because him and Pat are the ones striving for that heroic resolution. But I do think it is a very good two-side of the table thing to look at, because you see these other heroes and it's not an easy decision for them. But when you've exhausted all other options, what the hell do? You could even argue, being Jay Garrick and Pat, that if it went their way and they didn't do what they did, it could have actually have been so much worse. Like, look at the other alternate timeline number 2, where they didn't go and kill Bruce Gordon in the way that we saw later on in the episode. Just for the sake of, oh, we can't do this, there's always another way. Look, trust me, I get that. But let's say they didn't do it. It could have actually, they might not have found another way to stop him, and he could have wreaked utter hell, killed Starman's family, Hourman's family. Rick might not even be alive. Do you see where I'm going with this? So it's such an interesting issue to get into with any somewhat of a comic book story, because it's like, when a hero who is meant to stand for everything against what they're about to do is considering what they're about to do for the first time as it's potentially the only option, I don't see how that can't be a compelling story. I particularly don't blame them, because when you hear them say that Dr. Fate, the Hawks, Green Lantern, even the Spectre, the Spectre couldn't defeat Eclipso. What? Yeah, I would probably be like, okay, yep. This might be our only option. Especially when Eclipso also then went out of his way to articulate that he would vow to kill all of their families as well. Yeah. I thought it was a cool decision to leave the last vote to Starman, because it really shook Pat in that moment. But yeah, what I just loved most about this is the haunting duty that the JSA had to carry out. And you really felt that when Starman got back into the car. And this was all around the time when Courtney managed to snap Pat out of it through using the cosmic staff. And he told her the real reason, which, you know, coincided with this whole flashback. And what's even worse about this, in a way, in a tragic way, is that Starman even admits when he gets back in the car that Pat is right. The JSA should never take a life. You can hear Eclipso screaming in frustration being back in the Black Diamond, because I think that's the one thing you wouldn't expect these heroes to do. So he was fooled, because they actually went there and killed Bruce Gordon, his host. And this more or less broke the JSA up, as we've somewhat discussed earlier. Like, other than, you know, the fact that the ISA reformed many years later, apparently, before they all died, that they never really were the same ever again. And I understand why Courtney is really pissed, because, you know, at the end of the day, from her perspective, I feel like maybe this is something she could have known. And this whole secret, maybe, you know, I was thinking it would be something even bigger. But I don't think it necessarily would change. I mean, maybe it does. Maybe it is just for the sake of the plot. But if I was Courtney, I don't know if it would, you know, change my perception forever about the JSA. I would understand that they were in such a tight situation where you had to make one decision or the other one. And as I said earlier, imagine if they didn't. It could have gone much worse. So that's why it's a very interesting problem to introduce, because it gets the audience really thinking, what would I do? What do I support with this hero's decision? I don't necessarily support both answers, but you have to pick one. So with Courtney here, I don't think it shattered her perception of the JSA. And it's going to be interesting to see the fallout of this in the next episode. And I hope that she's not too pissed at Pat, because, like, what does this really do? Like, if keeping that from them? Because if he told her earlier on, yeah, by the way, you have to kill the host of Eclipso, it wouldn't have changed anything. Because, for example, that means that they would have had to have killed Cindy at the time of when she was possessed. But we all know that Courtney, Yolanda, Beth, and Rick would not have gone and done that. So I just feel like if she knew earlier on, she wouldn't have done the very method that is the way to stop Eclipso, aka killing the host, Cindy. That just wouldn't have happened. Courtney isn't a murderer. So I don't know what it would have really changed, other than the perception of the JSA, the original JSA, that they're trying to live up to. I suppose I can buy that one a little bit. I'm just thinking about the promo, because in the promo she was like, do you have any idea what, like, keeping the secret is done to it? It's like, what do you mean? Like, I hope you're not talking about how it could have helped you stop Eclipso sooner, because as I keep saying, you wouldn't have killed Cindy. So I hope that it's organic rather than artificial fallout from this revelation of this secret being learned by Courtney. But other than that, the frustration with just her stepdad being no more secrets and stuff, I totally understand where she's coming from there, with how upset she is. And then this turned into the end of the episode, with the camera panning out, mini Bruce Gordon just giggling away at the family. You know, he's getting what he wants. Everything's falling apart. Like, she confronts Barbara saying, how could you not tell me? Because that was salt in the wound as well. So everyone, I enjoyed this episode. I like where we're at. I feel like things do, as I keep saying in the past 3 or 4 reviews now, we do need to ramp up. I think that's most of the Eclipso trolling done now. You know, he's trolled Barbara and Pat, he's trolled Courtney, he's trolled Mike, he's trolled basically everyone. So I hope what happens next, and also just in general, the way that he's broken down, you can see what they're going for in this season. Everyone's being broken down, really broken down, to the point of where Courtney was considering going after Eclipso with just her and Beth. But we know from the promo of next episode, we're finally getting Jenny back, the new Green Lantern. I don't know what she's necessarily going to bring. Maybe, you know, her powers and the Lantern powers will have something to do with the Black Diamond shards, because it seems like that way from what I'm probably showing on screen. But yeah, I would love to know your theories. I just feel like, as much of a slow burn as this has been, and a very interesting story, I just want something big big to happen. And personally for me, yeah, don't get me wrong, it was cool seeing flashbacks of the original JSA, but it wasn't that big. I feel like they could have made it a bit bigger if they would have shown. I think they should have done this actually as some constructive criticism, and the more I think about it, the more it actually aggravates me a bit. How cool would it have been to have seen something pretty dark like the JSA go in there, actually confront Bruce Gordon, seeing how hard it was for Starman to maybe go through with something. Obviously not actually showing the moment where the JSA somewhat murdered Bruce Gordon, but maybe have the moment where Sylvester Pemberton raises up the cosmic staff like this and he's about to release the charge that would maybe be deployed up until his death, Bruce Gordon's death, but seeing that look in his eyes, that would have been very powerful. And then it would have added even more context into that scene where Sylvester opened the door and got back into the car with a couple of drops of blood on him. Do you see where I'm going with that? I feel like this episode, for me, would have packed that extra punch if we saw a scene like that. And I feel like that's what this season is missing. We need something more now, I feel. No hating. I'm really enjoying this story overall. I want something to happen. Something. But hopefully that will happen now, especially because we're getting Green Lantern back, and usually that's quite Powersy related. So anyway, guys, like this video if you did enjoy it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I said earlier. I would really appreciate that. And just leave me your theories, comments, just about anything and everything Stargirl. I love reading every single comment. I do reply to a lot of them as well. So yeah, I'll be reading them. If you want to follow me a little bit more, check out my Twitter links in the top pinned comment and my Discord server and other places you can support me. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you starlings in the next video. Goodbye.